Hi, everyone. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. And our topic for tonight is Neoliberalism Rides Again in Argentina, in Europe. It also is ruining X. Okay. And it's also causing great damage here, okay, in the United States. And we're going to discuss all those things, okay, tonight. And I'll welcome Brandy Weaver. Joining ACAB includes ICE and Border Patrol. Brandy says Joe Stein 2024. And Steve Wolfbrandt is also here. Thank you, Steve, for coming. And we're ready to go. We have a third person here, but that person has not announced themselves quite yet. So here we go. I'm going to start off with I'm going to start off with the Argentinian situation and with an article that originally comes from The Guardian, but that I picked up through Portside, which is an aggregative site that is not behind a paywall. So anyway, the title of the article is Economists Warn Electing Far Right, I guess, it's Milei, Milei, would spell devastation for Argentina. Almost 100 economists, including Thomas Piketty and J.R.T. Ghosh, publish open letter ahead of the country's 19th of November election. So in other words, the economists are trying to influence, the election of the 19th by stating what they think will happen, if Milei should win. Here's a picture, of Milei. He's wearing a leather jacket. I'm not sure the significance of that. I also have a leather jacket, but his appears to be a black leather jacket. Perhaps he rides a motorcycle. I do not know. Anyway, Javier Milei describes himself as an anarcho-capitalist, which already in those words you notice that he is a nut. The election of I suppose I should explain that, but what I'm saying is I think that anarchists are nuts. But that's just me. I'm not going to explain it, at length. The idea, of the elimination of government is and always has been nuts. The election of the radical right-wing economist Javier Milei as president of Argentina would probably inflict further economic, quote, devastation, unquote, social chaos on the South American country. A group of more than 100 leading economists has warned in an open letter published ahead of Argentina's crunch 19th of November election. The economists said they understood the, quote, deep-seated desire for economic stability among voters, given Argentina's frequent financial crises and recurring bouts of very high inflation. 4 in 10 citizens currently live in poverty, and annual inflation is close to 140%, a crisis Milei has vowed to fix by defeating his rival, Argentina's finance minister, Sergio Massa. taking dramatic measures such as abolishing the central bank and dollarizing the economy. So, as an MMT, political economist, I guess I can fairly characterize myself, okay, in that way. I'm officially a political scientist. That is what my PhD is in. But I've written quite a lot, okay, in economics using the MMT approach, okay, to economics. So I think it's fair to characterize myself, okay, as a political economist. And what I can say is if you are a nation that has and issues your own currency, okay, as Argentina is, the worst thing that you can do is to completely give away your monetary sovereignty by dollarizing the economy. Dollarizing means adopting the dollar, okay, as your currency, which explains why he wants to get rid of the central bank, because the central bank of currencies generally issues the money, okay, as part of the government. So if you're going to replace your own money, okay, with the US dollar, then you don't need to have a central bank because your central bank is virtually going to be the US Federal Reserve. And that's why you don't need the central bank. Quote going on with the article. However, while apparently simple solutions may be appealing, they're likely to cause more devastation in the world in the short run while severely reducing policy space in the long run, unquote, warned the letter whose signatories include influential economists such as Thomas Piketty, the French. I still believe that he's a sociologist, but of course, he's the author, okay, of Capital, his own version, okay, of Capital. And he writes a lot, okay, in economics also. So he's probably a political economist, kind of like me. But anyway, I don't know whether he's officially an economist in the sense that he has a degree, okay, in economics. I think that may be a misnomer there. Such as Francis Thomas Piketty, India's Jayati Ghosh, the Serbian American Branko Milanovic. I think it's actually pronounced actually Milanovic, but I may be mistaken there. And Colombia's former finance minister Jose Antonio um, Ocampo. Let us said that the proposals, okay, of Javier Milei are presented as, quote, a radical departure from traditional economic thinking, unquote, were actually, quote, rooted in laissez-faire economics, unquote. Well, that's a very fair characterization because, of course, the economic theory of the anarcho-capitalists, okay, is laissez-faire economics. They harken back to Adam Smith. In fact, even a more radical version, okay, of Adam Smith, because Adam Smith was no anarchist. Quote, fraught with risks that make them potentially very harmful for the Argentine economy and the Argentine people, unquote. On the campaign trail, Javier Milei, a self-described anarcho-capitalist, there's that term again, has brandished a chainsaw to symbolize his desire to slash subsidies and drastically reduce state expenditure on social programs. He has also repeatedly claimed that taxes are theft, quote unquote, and called the social justice programs they finance an, quote, aberration, unquote. Quote again, the state was invented by the devil. God's system is the free market, unquote. He has said that's the exact opposite, okay, of what I think. Okay. Of course, uh, I think the state was invented by God, and the devil system is the free market. Because the free market is totally unstable, and it always ends up dominated by the oligarchs. It's the quip trip to oligarchy. That is what it is. An oligarchy is one of the devil's political systems. It is a form of tyranny. But in their letter, the economists warned that, quote, a major reduction in government spending would increase already high levels of poverty and inequality and could result in significantly increased social tensions and conflicts, um, unquote. Of course, okay, as economists and supposed scientific, okay, economists, the 100 or so who signed that letter always qualify their statements. A major reduction in government spending would increase already high levels of poverty and inequality and could result in significantly increased social tensions and conflict. Believe me, they would result in significantly increased social tensions and conflict. Not could, would. There is no other way. Quote, Javier Milei's dollarization and fiscal austerity proposals overlook the complexities of modern economies, ignore lessons from historical crises, and open the door for accentuating already severe inequalities, unquote. Okay, they wrote. Again, that is very moderately stated. It's not just the complexities of modern economies that are ignored, okay, but it's the complexities of ancient economies that are ignored. I mean, recall there were oligarchies in back of ancient economies too, weren't there? Okay, and laissez-faire is a recipe for a transition to oligarchy. That's true for both modern economies and ancient economies. Ghosh, a development economist from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, said she and the letter's other two co-authors, Piketty and Milanovic, worried Javier Milei's policies, quote, would be deeply damaging for Argentina and very unfortunate for the entire continent. Of course they would. Why is Argentina sitting in the state it is? Because neoliberal governments have created a situation where the state of Argentina has become severely in debt to the neoliberal institutions and to the neoliberal system. And because of the burden of that particular debt, the monetary sovereignty of Argentina has been undermined over a period of time. And the socialist oriented governments of Argentina have not been able to heal the inequalities that exist in that particular country. There's no way they can operate because they can't escape from the burden of that debt. In order to escape from it, they have to repudiate, that debt. And if they repudiated it, they would face extreme international pressure from the United States and from other collective West countries that could even result in military interventions, okay, in Argentina. So Argentina has been trapped. There is a chance for Argentina to get out of the trap. That is, Argentina has just been invited to join the BRICS nations. If they join BRICS, and if they repudiate their debts to the Western institutions, to the World Bank, to the IMF, and to other Western creditors, of course, they won't be able to trade with any of the Western countries for a while. Again, because they would come under economic sanctions. But if the BRICS nations protect them, then those debts would no longer be a burden to them because they could be repudiated. And then the socialist governments would be able to heal the inequalities, change the economic and social structure, okay, of Argentina, and realize the wonderful potential that Argentina has due to the natural resources, okay, in that particular country, and its ability to produce the grain, okay, and other foodstuffs, okay, and the material resources it also has, which are considerable and have always been considerable. I can't go into the history of Argentina because I don't have any time here, but it has gotten into the neoliberal trap. It's one of the prime examples of a nation that has gotten into, okay, the neoliberal trap. And it has been slowly destroying the political system, okay, of that country. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't think that letter goes far enough. I think it should go in more into the kind of economic analysis that insists on Argentina getting its monetary sovereignty back so it can get the policy space it needs back so that its political system can put together the reforms that it has to put together to change things in Argentina. Now, Lula has been trying to help them. He was sponsoring them, okay, to get into BRICS. But, okay, if Milei wins, what will then happen is that the invitation to join BRICS will not be accepted then if it is not, the neoliberal trap will completely close, okay, for Argentina, and it will not be able to get out for at least another 4 years and maybe 8 years. Okay. So I don't think this letter goes far enough in analyzing what's wrong, okay, with Argentina. It warns, okay, of damage, but it doesn't seem to have gone into the cycle of back and forth that Argentina has suffered, at least since the end, okay, of the Second World War, from left-wing governments to right-wing governments, okay, and back again. And the right-wing governments constantly putting Argentina into debt, constantly creating a situation that undermines the monetary sovereignty, okay, of that country. Anyway, that's all I have time for today. Maybe I should have spent the whole show talking about Argentina, but that will suffice for now. Let us move on to the second piece for tonight. That second piece, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to share this on Facebook tonight. I should probably do that now. There we go. I need help here on my StreamYard team. I am doing everything myself. And so I forget things like sharing to Facebook. Anyway, the next piece I wanted to pick up on, showing the damages, of neoliberalism, comes from Social Europe. Social Europe is a publication that deals with society and economy, in Europe. This piece is called The Imperative of Reforming EU Economic Governance. It was written today, the 9th of November, 2023. At least it was published today. The author, is Isabelle Brachet. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. It seems like a French name. Finance ministers must forestall reapplication of the existing fiscal rules to prevent a disastrous renewal, of austerity. By the way, has Dee arrived yet? I am expecting her, but she hasn't arrived yet. Okay, so that's all right. She's been discussing, of course, the problems in Israel and Palestine. I was at that show from 8 to 9, but then had to come over here. So, let us go on. This is a graphic. Europe, the answers, democracy, and guess what this was? It was a flashback to the eve of a meeting of Eurozone finance ministers in February 2015, an anti-austerity protest outside the Greek parliament in Athens. It was at that meeting in February of 2015 that the Eurozone finance ministers tried to lock the Greeks successfully, they were, into an austerity pattern in 2015, which Syriza, under their finance minister, specifically Yanis Varoufakis, was trying to free them from. And in spite of a mighty struggle on his part, he eventually lost the support of Syriza itself, and Syriza caved to the pressure from the EU finance ministers and the Troika in Europe. Troika is made up of the European Commission, or I should say the Eurozone Commission, the IMF, and the third member of the Troika. Oh, it's the European Central Bank. Third member of the Troika is the European Central Bank. So the European Union Ministers of Finance and Economics gathered today in Brussels to discuss the long overdue reform of the EU's economic governance. Now, that's been a problem with the EU since its founding in the Maastricht Treaty of, I believe, I recall correctly, it was 1996 or 1997. I should add, since the signing of that treaty, MMT economists have been predicting the failure, of the Eurozone, and everything that was predicted by the MMT economists has come true. The suffering, of the EU nations because of the system of economic governance they started out with has been realized in spades in Europe and has hurt the populations there now for at least the last 15 years. If they cannot find agreement, the path ahead could be of renewed austerity, leading to a disaster on social, economic, environmental, and political fronts, says the author, Isabelle Brachet. The current fiscal rules, enshrined in EU regulations called the Stability and Growth Pact, but also in the treaties, mandate that member states limit their public debt to 60% of gross domestic product and their budget deficit to 3% of GDP. The rules were paused in March of 2020 through the General Escape Clause built into the pact. First, to allow governments to support households and businesses during the severe downturn occasioned by COVID-19, and later to shield them from the energy price increases stemming from the war in Ukraine. Fiscal consolidation, quote unquote. During these turbulent years, half the member states accumulated deficits and debts beyond the ceilings. If the finance ministers do not find common ground for reform, the escape clause will end and the existing rules will reapply starting from January. This would drive many countries to, quote, fiscal consolidation, unquote. Huge cuts in public spending. By the way, this is what was forced on Greece in 2015, including on the transition towards climate neutrality and on public services. These would erode the social rights of those already struggling with the increasing cost of living. Renewed austerity would hit particularly hard the countries with public debt above 100% of GDP. Who were those countries? Greece, Italy, Portugal, France, Spain, okay, and Belgium. Now, there used to be a situation, okay, at the time of the recession, which due to austerity lasted in Europe, okay, for a very long time. Okay, the recession of 2008, the Great Recession, it's often called. There used to be an expression then that was used, made reference to the pigs. The pigs were Portugal, Ireland, um, uh, um, um, uh, Italy, Greece, okay, and Spain. Those were the pigs nations, okay, at that time. Okay, so Ireland managed to escape from the austerity through very, very harsh measures, up to a 50% level of unemployment on the young, okay, in Ireland for a few years back in the period 2010 to 2000, okay, and 15. They managed to get themselves back on their feet, uh, okay, through basically uh, running, okay, an export economy that worked for them. So they're no longer in this group of pigs. But what has been added to this group are France um, um, uh, um, uh, and Belgium that have never suffered the kind of austerity that was imposed on Greece and Italy and Portugal and Spain, okay, and Ireland. So France and Spain, okay, would be added. Now, I don't know if France is going to sit still for that because it looks like France is going to be taken over by Marine Le Pen and her party, which is extremely nationalist, okay, and right wing. And if anybody's going to withdraw from the Eurozone quickly, if that happens, okay, it's going to be France. And if France withdraws from the Eurozone, then the Eurozone is going to fall. So these finance ministers had better come to agreement or else. Anyway, going on with the article. Without a deep reform of the EU fiscal rules, which of course are all neoliberal fiscal rules, we shall witness a fourfold disaster. A social disaster, cuts in healthcare, childcare, education, public transport, pensions, okay, and unemployment. Unemployment allowances would exacerbate inequality at a time when the extreme wealth of a few continues obscenely to rise. Already, more than a fifth of the EU population is at risk of poverty or social exclusion. Public services play, I'm quoting now from the article, play an equalizing role in societies and must be strengthened, not further dismantled, hitting the most vulnerable hardest. Indeed, the need for social protection and services will grow in the face of climate shocks and the transition towards a circular and decarbonized economy, long longer geared to overproduction and overconsumption. Second bullet point, an economic disaster. Austerity was imposed on several EU countries when the Eurozone crisis hit. The cuts in public spending not only curbing rights to health, education, and social protection, but also lowering investment in the economy from 2010. The EU learned the lessons and as a result introduced during the pandemic a temporary job guarantee scheme for workers. That's what's called the SURE scheme, SURE, and a recovery and resilience facility, RRF, to allow member states to protect people and rebuild their economies. Imposing massive cuts in public spending now would jeopardize the positive effects of this injection of fresh money and kill recovery, reducing the chances of seeing the debt to GDP ratios fall. If the countries were monetary sovereigns, the debt to GDP ratios would not matter. Always keep that in mind. They don't matter for monetary sovereign but countries. But let's sort of step back from that a bit and note uh, um, uh, as well that uh, during the debate, okay, over Ukraine, okay, I forget who it was. I think it was Joseph Borrell, who was the finance minister, okay, of the Eurozone countries, okay, in general. I believe that's his particular position. But he very famously said that the world is divided, okay, into two groups. The Europeans, who have constructed societies that are very civilized and constitute, okay, a garden, and countries like those of the Middle East, okay, and the developing countries, okay, which are, okay, the jungle. Now, this vaguely racist kind of statement created quite a controversy, but the point here is, okay, that I'm making is that if the European countries go back to those stupid fiscal rules that they first adopted, they will destroy their garden and they will create a jungle, okay, in Europe. All while the other countries of the world, okay, the developing countries of the world, through BRICS and other kinds, okay, of instrumentalities, are creating their own garden. It would be very, very ironic to find that the European garden was being destroyed by the Europeans at the very same time that the so-called jungle of other nations were developing their international garden. I thought it was only fair to say that. Too tight EU fiscal rules would also deepen economic disparities, okay, among member states. The relaxation of the quote state aid quote constraints on unfair competition in the face of green subsidies introduced in the United States means that countries such as Germany and France can support their industries more than other member states whose investments are precisely constrained by the debt and deficit rules of the Eurozone. Third bullet point, an environmental and climate disaster. Inaction for so long has left Europe with a very tight time frame to transform its economy to fit science-based planetary boundaries, constraining global heating to 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial times. And if the fiscal rules continue to prevent public investments at scale, the EU's climate goals will not be met. The European Commission now estimates that to implement the European Green Deal and make the transition to renewable energy, an annual funding shortfall of 620 billion euros must be filled. While private finance has an important role, not all these investments will generate a high enough financial return quickly enough to make a business case. Massive public investments will be needed too. For the planet, there could not possibly be a worse moment to restart austerity measures. Of course, that's quite correct. Okay, and number four, there would be a political disaster. Further cuts in public spending without further initiatives to tax wealth across all EU countries, when wealth inequality has been exacerbated during the pandemic and fossil fuel. Banking and food retail companies have posted record profits since the war in Ukraine, while more and more people cannot pay their bills without full rejection of mainstream. I think that should be full rejection of mainstream political parties. Oh, I think she means would fuel the rejection of the mainstream political parties. This would be the perfect recipe for more and more votes in the European elections next June, endorsing a nationalistic, racist, inward-looking approaches. In the middle of geopolitical turmoil and the burning climate threat, we need more than ever to act together for social justice, climate, and the environment, as well as peace and human rights in Europe and around the world. That is what the EU project needs to be. Okay, more quoting from the article. More flexibility. In April, after extensive consultations, the Commission tabled a legislative proposal on the fiscal rules. That is the text the economy and finance ministers are discussing, aiming to agree on a general approach to the reform. The proposal would amend the Stability and Growth Pact, changing the EU treaties being much more complex and protracted, while retaining the goal of limiting public debt to 60% and the budget deficit to 3% of a member state's GOP. The proposal on the table would introduce more flexibility as far as the debt is concerned. So I'm here to say right here and right now, if those goals of limiting public debt to 60% of GDP and the budget deficit to 3% a year, if that is retained, they will never successfully get to the climate transition that is needed. They need much more flexibility than that. Going on with the article, each country would have to follow a tailored pathway with more time and under the current rules to reduce its debt. Member states would be encouraged to spend on EU priorities, including climate action and the energy transition, and to back these investments with appropriate policy reforms. That's not what is needed now. What is needed now is for the EU to break up, let the individual countries go, and establish their own monetary sovereignty, and then try through a loose form of a political union to get countries to collaborate on the Green Deal for Europe. But if you're going to make the transition uh, to a green system, you have to be able to use the increased policy space that comes, okay, with deficit spending, and you have to have the freedom, okay, of units, okay, that are political units, but that can issue their own currency. So the debt instruments that they also issue are never a burden for these particular countries. Now, that can be done in one of two ways. It can be done if the countries join together, okay, in a political union where there is a central government that is controlling the currency and that is willing to make up for the shortfalls that the member states uh, uh, incur. But it's unlikely that Europe, okay, is ready for that because the economic union that was created, okay, by Maastricht has not evolved, okay, into a true political union, as was the hope. And one of the reasons why it has not evolved into that is because of the austerity policies that were introduced and victimized certain countries to the exclusion, okay, of other countries. But because that union has never developed inside of Europe, now the only real alternative which is possible is to break up the economic union, okay, in my view, and to let the countries go their own way economically and try to get them to come, okay, to common agreements, each backed by the monetary sovereignty of the individual nations. This would move away from an obsessive focus on quantitative criteria. There's still going to be a focus on quantitative criteria if you limit the public debt to 60% and the budget deficit to 3% of a state's GDP. That's insanity. This would move away from an obsessive focus on quantitative, ignoring the impact on climate and environment. Tiny steps in the right direction, but definitely not enough. Climate and social objectives. Finance ministers need instead to set the EU's macroeconomic rules by its climate and social objectives. Such rules, I couldn't agree more. The climate and social objectives have to be, those are what's important for the public purpose. The economic rules have to be subordinate to the climate and the social objectives. Such rules should encourage member states to invest in just transition rather than pushing them to generate indiscriminate GDP growth. They should also ensure that the investments and reforms proposed by member states in their national budget plans are not harming the climate and the environment. The RRF already incorporates such a do no significant harm criterion. This should entail, for example, cutting down fossil fuel subsidies and investing in social, just, renewable energy projects instead. Last but not least, member states should indicate to what extent their budget plans contribute to or contradict their climate objectives by applying green budgeting tools. Okay, what Isabella Brachet fails to mention here is that the design of the Eurozone in the first place and its long term goals of a GDP ratio, debt to GDP ratio of 60% and a deficit of 3% per year, those rules were dictated by neoliberal criteria for economic sustainability, okay, and stability. And underlying those criteria was the idea that there is no such thing, okay, as government money, that all the money comes from people in the private sector who have to be taxed to pay for things. That's what lies behind the 60% criteria and the 3% criterion as well. So those criteria have to go. If neoliberalism is retained in those criteria, Europe won't be able to make the transition it seeks to a new Green Deal. Reform of the fiscal rules, a very divisive topic among member states. Germany is leading a group of countries which want debt reduction but benchmarks applying to all, regardless of the national context of the social and climate consequences. Not a single government champions rules that would ensure that public spending does not harm the EU's climate and social goals. They all want to keep their sovereign power to fund whatever they like, even if this contradicts the vital goals they have collectively set by themselves. This is very true. This is very true. It's another reason why monetary sovereignty has to be restored to these governments, either restored to these governments or they have to join, a political system in which they are all are member states, on the analogy of the member states of the United States or other federal systems, such as, for example, the Russian Federation. Also, there are the member states there, but there is a single central bank, in Russia. And Russia, right now, I believe, fulfills the conditions for a monetary sovereign. The EU's current fiscal roles are promoting an economic model generating climate change. Much deeper economic governance reform is needed, but once more, our government representatives may not be up to it. Isabella Brachet leads the work of Climate Action Network Europe on the reform of EU economic governance and a socially just transition. Previously, she was EU advocacy advisor for ActionAid International and worked for 15 years for the International Federation of Human Rights. But she was not sufficiently bold on this to suggest either Europe move forward to a full union or Europe retreat to a set of independent nations that are monetarily sovereign. Either one or the other is necessary. So there is neoliberal damage. In the Eurozone, the neoliberal damage was done in the actual design of the Eurozone, in the first place. Let's move on now to the third of the pieces I want to cover here. That third piece was about Twitter. Twitter under Elon Musk. This was written by Claire Berlinski for Politico on November 8th, 2023. Once again, it appeared in Portside. That's where I picked it up. You should be seeing that now. Maybe you're not seeing that now because I didn't share it yet. You should be seeing that now. I think you are seeing that now. Twitter gave us an indispensable real-time news platform. X took it away. The Arab Spring cemented Twitter's indispensable role in fast-moving international stories. Elon Musk has destroyed that and given us something useless and dangerous. That's the contention of this article right there by Claire Berlinski. And here, of course, is the icon of Twitter and the icon of X, which, by the way, I love to call Zitter, but it doesn't seem to be getting picked up, perhaps because people are afraid of getting sued by Elon. I first began using Twitter, now X, after the 2010 earthquake in Port-au-Prince, when I could not find my family. I was in Washington, D.C. within days of the earthquake. Hundreds of volunteers using a crisis mapping platform called Ushahidi, Swahili for witness, quote unquote, began logging calls for help via cell phone texts and Twitter, putting them on a map and sending that information to search and rescue teams. I only found my family because Facebook and Twitter worked even when their phones and emails did not. Now, that's very interesting, I think. Not long after came the Arab Spring, when Twitter was a source of crucial, sometimes life saving information and a powerful coordinating tool for demonstrators. For journalists and analysts, it was matchless for watching events unfold in real time. I was in Istanbul during the 2013 Gezi Park demonstrations, which began as a protest against the destruction of a park and turned into a massive uprising against the Turkish government. Like everyone, I used Twitter to figure out which streets were safe. No news agency could replicate this function for citizens on the ground, but I used it too to tell the world what was happening in Turkey. That was uh, the beginning of an era. Twitter was obviously imperfect, but it quickly became the central platform for gathering information, networking in politics and international affairs, especially in crises where traditional media coverage was thin. The war in Gaza marks the end of that era. Ex CEO Elon Musk has so profoundly undermined the functions that made Twitter useful in an international crisis that it is now counterproductive to turn to it if you hope to understand what's happening on the ground when news breaks around the world. Over the course of 10 years, X has evolved from indispensable to useless. It is fitting that, along with other changes, Musk changed the name of the company. Literally and figuratively, we're witnessing the first post Twitter major world conflict. Disinformation and misinformation proliferated on the platform prior to Musk's takeover, but the difference in degree is so significant now as to amount to a difference in kind. Almost every significant change Musk has made has reduced its value as a source of reliable information from and for people affected by a disaster, and every change similarly has increased its utility to malicious propagandists and scammers. When Musk arrived, he dissolved Twitter's Trust and Safety Council, the advisory group of some 100 independent civil, human rights, and other organizations that helped the company to combat misinformation, and fired its full time trust and safety employees, including all but one member of the AI ethics team that monitored algorithmic amplification. He blew up the old verification system. A blue check once signified the account belonged to someone whose identity had been confirmed and who fell under the one following categories: government, companies, brands, and organizations, news organizations and journalists, entertainment, sports and gaming, activists and organizers, content creators, and influential individuals. The prevalence on Twitter of verified journalists, academics, researchers, and government sources made it possible in a crisis to quickly find reliable people who were on the ground and who could probably be trusted to report what they were seeing in reasonably good faith. Now, the blue check mark signifies only that the owner has paid for it. When you buy a blue check, your posts go to the top of the search results and replies, irrespective of others' desire to see them. And there's a photo of Wooden Palestinians sitting in an Al Shifa hospital in Gaza City, central Gaza Strip, after arriving from Ali Hospital following an explosion there on October 17th. X now pays users based on the number of views they receive, creating a massive incentive to post sensationalistic and inflammatory lies. On the ground, witnesses and worse, people who need help, can't reach their audiences unless they have a costly blue check mark and a willingness to compete with the most outrageous promoted content. Musk has stripped headlines and summaries from article previews. Images are no longer accompanied by context, making it that much easier to misunderstand them and that much less likely that users will read the article. Meanwhile, Musk promotes directly via his own tweets and algorithmically conspiracy theorists, Russian war propagandists, hostile state media, foreign and domestic extremists, and engagement farmers who exploit pain and tragedy to gain followers. Musk has created the conditions for a flood of misinformation, fake accounts, a problem that has proven particularly acute during the current war in Gaza. AI generated images are passed off as real. In a photo shared millions of times, for example, a man is seen carrying his children out of the ruins of a bombed building. The Post says, quote, an image is worth 1,000 words. The Palestine flag suggests the image is from Gaza. A BBC fact checker has confirmed the image is completely faked, generated by AI. A massive number of accounts posting images that purport to be from Gaza are in fact posting images from unrelated conflicts. These tweets have racked up millions of views and shares. According to Cyabra, an Israeli analysis firm, pro-Hamas forces have launched a coordinated influence operations campaign involving tens of thousands of fake profiles. As a result, 1 in 5 social media accounts participating in the conversation about the war in Gaza are fake. 1 in 4 pro-Hamas profiles are fake. It's not clear who is creating and using these fake profiles to spread disinformation, but it could be anyone from Russian internet trolls to anti-Semites to far-right hucksters, who are eager to make a buck. I have to add to this, it could be, of course, lots of fake accounts representing Israeli intelligence and the IDF and the current Israeli government. I mean, with the current structure of Twitter and the rules, that govern Twitter, it is possible for anyone paying the freight to tango, and there are no controls at all on what is fake and what is not fake. Now, this article evidently has a bias towards governmental sources. It's apparent from the examples that he puts in here to strengthen his arguments. But whether those examples are unbiased um, 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 or not, his argument is based on the new structure at what formerly was Twitter. And his account of that structure seems to me to be correct. The new structure does open the way for tens of thousands of profiles that are fake to flood the social media structure, of Twitter. He says 1 in 5 social media accounts participating in the conversation about the war in Gaza are fake. 1 in 4 pro-Hamas profiles, are fake. But it's not clear that there are not many other fake profiles that are coming in here. I mean, Israeli intelligence knows how to maximize propaganda effectiveness, certainly as well as Hamas does. So, to my mind, what emerges from this is that two sides, maybe more than two sides, actually multiple sides, are arguing about what the reality is coming out of Twitter. It's very difficult for people who are primarily consumers of Twitter to validate what anybody is saying. And so the fog of war is massively increased and amplified by Twitter in this particular situation. We onlookers don't know what's true, and what's not true when photos can be generated, by AIs. We have no idea whether they're generated by AIs, or not. But what we do know is there's no structure at Twitter and at Facebook to curate things in service of the truth. Now, some people would say there's no such thing, as the truth, and that therefore, it doesn't matter. But this extremely relativistic kind of orientation will not wash. There are some things that are closer to the truth than other things, and we can discriminate if we try hard what is closer to the truth than some other competing narrative, or competing views. And we need people and institutions within Twitter that are capable, of doing that. So, continuing on. Okay, so the article says that accounts that were once clearly labeled as state affiliated, such as that of Iran's Press TV, are no longer distinguished from others. In September, an EU report found that the reach and influence, quote unquote, of Kremlin backed accounts on social media and on X in particular had increased in 2023. Now, that, of course, may be true, but it's a very unquantitative statement. We don't know how much they've increased, in 2022. And what about the US backed accounts on social media? There are US backed accounts too. There are Democratic Party backed accounts too. There are Republican backed accounts too. None of them, are unbiased. And we don't have institutions we can count on to begin to discriminate about who's simply creating propaganda and who's creating views that are closer to the truth. Now, I'm not offering, a solution to this. I personally found the old system, on Twitter, where they had appointed 100 trustworthy sources to curate, and to judge. I found, that account was actually somewhat oppressive and suppressing certain kinds of opinions. But at least they were trying, and that system could have been reformed to help people to discriminate what was closer to the truth, and what was not. The current system is just a total Wild West kind, free-for-all, and Elon Musk, the libertarian that he is, somehow thinks that the truth is going to emerge from this free market idea, this free market of ideas, which, by the way, he periodically influences with his own tweets. So it's not a free market idea already because he influences with his own tweets, right? And since he's the owner of Twitter, a very large number of people follow him. And also, as in any free market, in Twitter over time, there has been, the development, of an oligarchy of people who have millions, of followers, and their views are far more influential than simply the views of people who join Twitter, and who begin to tweet. What is not considered is whether the influence of money is strong here, in the sense that people with a high number of views have gotten there because of the influence of money in some way, or other. That kind of analysis still has to be done, on Twitter. But I'll bet that the influence, of wealth and money in these areas is quite considerable, and it remains completely unanalyzed. So I have to offer that. Quote, the average engagement with disinformation content found on X is 1.977 times as high as the average engagement with non-disinformation the authors wrote. In other words, X users are twice as likely to engage with lies as the truth. Snuff videos have proliferated on the platform too. A pro Kremlin account shared a video of a beheading in Ukraine in April. Endless videos of atrocities purportedly committed by Hamas or by Israel clatter across my feed. It is all but impossible to use X now without seeing the video that shows or purports to show the murder of a human being. Meanwhile, good sources of information are leaving the platform. Many of the most useful voices are now gone. Reporters have fled, largely moving to Blue Sky, but Blue Sky can't replace X yet. Its network is too small. Okay, I personally have not totally moved to Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter still, but okay, I'm on Blue Sky as well. You can use it to talk to other journalists, not so much to find sources or promote your work to your readers. To judge by the responses to the fake tweets, most people have no idea they're fake. Musk certainly doesn't. Recently, he recommended in a since deleted tweet that his followers follow two well known disinformation accounts. One of them, for example, provides such helpful analysis as, quote, the overwhelming majority of people in the media and banks are Zionists. When Musk suggests something like that, it is not just his 162 million followers who see it. You can mute him, but unless you do, everything Musk says is now forced into the timeline of every user of the platform, whether or not they follow him. Some will reply correctly that the mainstream media hasn't covered itself in glory during this conflict either. Many news organizations have made serious mistakes in the past week, but the difference between sloppy or biased news coverage and millions of deliberate lies, none retracted, is significant. If you read the former, you'll still be on this planet. If you read the latter, you'll be in an alternate universe. As for Israelis or Palestinians hoping to use the platform to exchange life-saving information, forget it. For $8, anyone can impersonate the official account of the IDF. Impersonation is still officially against X's rules, but the lack of a real verification system makes it easier to do for longer. How could Israelis trust warning and updates from their government or from each other on X when Hamas or the Iranian operatives can so readily pretend to be anyone they please? How would Palestinian rescuers use X to locate people who need help when every image they see directs them to Syria? The state of affairs is massively deleterious to American national security. Members of Congress are as vulnerable to hostile disinformation as anyone else. One morning, I watched a number of Russian accounts, including that of former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, begin simultaneously to push out the line that Israel had been attacked with weapons the U.S. sent to Ukraine, which Israelis immediately denied. By afternoon, a U.S. Representative, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, was asserting this as fact. Organized, state-sponsored information operations aim to generate support in the U.S. for policies that are not in our interest and damping support for policies that are. Quote, feel the difference, wrote Dmitry Medvedev on X recently on a post that showed two photos. On the left, a vast sea of protesters against Israel, a U.S. ally, and on the right, a pitiful handful of protesters against the Russians, the Russian actions in Ukraine. The Russian information operations on social media have inflamed the global orgy of anti-Semitism we've seen since Hamas's attack goes without saying. No, I don't think it goes without saying. I think that has to be established through argument, of some kind. And I don't even know. I know there's been some increase of anti-Semitism, but I don't know if there's a global orgy of anti-Semitism. It seems to me there's a global orgy. Okay, if it is, okay, an orgy, uh, okay, of but maybe we'll call it philo-Palestinianism or support for Palestinian rights. But I don't consider that to be a global orgy, okay, of anti-Semitism. So the author of this article would have to prove that to me. Okay, X has long been a critical source of information for journalists in the news cycle. Now demands reporting at X speed. For most users, the website was a diversion. For journalists, it was essential. We built our audiences and our careers on Twitter. We invested years of our labor and creativity for free. We built it and we made it valuable. The degeneration of the quality of information on X means that journalists who are still on the platform waste far more time looking for the signal and the noise. They waste more time running down rumors. They're at greater risk of sharing fake information. They're doubtless absorbing narratives and framings from X shaped by disinformation, even if they're not sharing falsehoods. It's far from clear how the media will adapt to a post Twitter world. At least in the short term, the market won't be able to solve this problem because Twitter's value to consumers was owed to its dominance of the market. Everyone used it. A number of competitors are now trying to fill the void. But because the microblogging market is now fractured, no company can play the central role Twitter played. That might be why some governments are stepping in to fix these problems instead. On October 13th, the EU launched a probe of X over the spread of disinformation and violent content related to the Israel-Hamas conflict. The first step in an investigation determined whether the platform is violating the EU's new Digital Services Act. And so here's a tweet from Dmitry Medvedev. Well, NATO buddies, you've really got it, haven't you? The weapons handed to the Nazi regime in Ukraine are now being uh, actively used. I guess that's going to say, okay, in Israel. Actively being used against Israel. And it's only going to get worse. Do expect missiles, tanks, and quite soon planes fresh from Kiev, okay, in the black market. Uh, I don't know whether that's going to happen okay, or not. We know weapons meant for Ukraine have gone to Ukraine and then have appeared on the black market and uh, uh, um, 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 have appeared in various contexts, okay, in Africa, okay, in Syria, various other contexts. But that, okay, is not uh, something that was specifically targeted, okay, against Israel. It flowed through the black market and probably got to Hamas, okay, and to other actors who buy arms, okay, off the black market. But that is due to the fact, okay, that the United States handed the weapons to the Nazi regime, okay, in Ukraine, and I agree that it's a Nazi regime, and NATO failed to impose any controls, okay, on that particular regime. Anyway, going on with the article, Congress should do the same. The situation is intolerable to democracy. Musk is harming American security by gift wrapping X and handing it over to terrorists and hostile governments who are running information operations against the democratic ones. In the long run, it's finalizing a divorce between the public and reality. But Congress seems incapable. It's hard enough for the House to elect a speaker. X has been left to govern itself and has no interest in preserving the uniquely important role Twitter played by allowing real people around the world instantly to find and communicate with one another during a crisis. I have to say, that's the most persuasive part of the article and about, what's wrong with Twitter, or I should say with X. Okay, but what I also have to say is that what is wrong with X is motivated by the desire, of Elon Musk to make X a paying proposition. In other words, this is being driven by the desire for profits versus the desire for performing a public service for people. So this once again, uh, um, 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 is profits, but uh, um, over people, and it's the kind of thing you're always going to get when you have a major platform such as Twitter controlled by a private company. Why did the stockholders of Twitter sell themselves to Musk? It's because they were in it for a profit, and they took their profits, and they got out. And Musk was willing to pay an exorbitant price for Twitter, $40 billion, and now he's trying to recoup some of that $40 billion because now it's probably worth some fraction of that $40 billion. So he's trying anything he can to get back that $40 billion. So this desire for profit, it's this particular basic plank of neoliberalism, the neoliberal form of ideology. And Musk is an extreme neoliberal. He's a libertarian type of neoliberal. That's what has been driving that. But of course, the author doesn't want to point out that particular thing. From his point of view, Twitter was corrupted by Musk, where before it was a virtuous organization. It was never a virtuous organization, and its safety and trust committee was biased and did suppress certain kinds of sources. And many of us who were working for reform or for changing the current situation were victimized by this particular committee. Now we may be victimized by the situation of anarchy which exists on Twitter, which is fed by Musk. But it's not that we had a utopia before that was working for us, and now we don't have one that's working for us. Neither situation was working for us. It's fashionable to be cynical about X, but at its height, it was an astonishing human achievement. It cannot be rebuilt, and it's hard to say how it could be built again. One man destroyed it. It is one of history's great acts, of vandalism. Maybe what should happen is that, the United Nations, ought to buy Twitter, from Musk, pay him his $40 billion, and then establish the institution, of Twitter, and perform the safety and trust sort, of function with a very, very wide range of people oriented towards free speech and safeguarding free speech and trying to get as close as possible to lack of bias. Of course, there will always be bias, but the goal of objectivity should be held in those institutions that ought to be dedicated to finding the truth. And I envision that kind of Twitter existing, and it could be easily done if someone were willing to pay to Musk his $40 billion back so he could go on to do some other things. Anyway, so I think this is oversimplified. I'm going to read it again. It's fashionable to be cynical about X, but at its height, it was an astonishing human achievement. It cannot be rebuilt, and it's hard to see how it could be built again. Not so hard as he thinks, evidently. I've already proposed how it could be rebuilt again. One man destroyed it. It is one of history's great acts of vandalism, We still badly need reliable, real-time information about global conflicts on a platform with the reach that Twitter once had. But X won't ever again be that platform, or at least not until uh, it's bought by some institution that has an overriding interest in representing the truth. And maybe we can identify that institution. Could be the UN is close to it, or maybe it should be actually an institution within the UN. For example, um, there is the United Nations Education, Social, and Cultural Organization, specifically by UNESCO. The UN could buy it, turn it over, to UNESCO, and that would be a tremendous service that would redound to the legitimacy and the authority, of the United Nations. Claire Berlinski is a Paris-based journalist and the editor of the Cosmopolitan, but but uh, 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 globalist. So that means that Claire Berlinski is a globalist herself. That means she's self-identifying, as a neoliberal, because they are, the globalists, president. And that accounts for the neoliberal bias that we've seen, in this article, and for the obvious favorability towards the collective West and towards the United States as the definers of truth. So, on that note, I'm going to end this particular article. I had a fourth article that I was going to run to tonight. Specifically, that article was from Counterpunch, and it's Seeing Through the Economic Bait and Switch. It was by Sonali Kolhatkar, published on November 8th. I'm not going to have time to go through it because I have other things to do tonight. I recommend the article to you. If I have time, I'll come back to it next Thursday during the Neoliberal Show, but I won't be able to cover it here tonight. So I am going to go directly to your comments. I hope you found the program to be but to be valuable. Tonight. So here we have lots and lots of greetings. In the comments, with Brandy saying Jill Stein 2024. And around the world, D and friends, Joe, the link is not correct. Oh, D wasn't able to join because I guess the StreamYard link was wrong. I'm sorry, D. I thought I copied it correctly from StreamYard. Too late to do anything about it. I apologize. I should really check the first comments quickly and see if anything like that happens again. So Steve Wolfbrand checked out at about 9:27. I have to get to bed in early morning. Good night, everybody. Case says, night, Steve. I was sorry that Steve couldn't be here for the article, on X. I think that was a very important article and maybe would give him a different perspective, on Elon Musk. Madeline joined at 9:33 as Peace Voter 2007. And there were greetings, of course. And Kay says, hope they don't shut the government down. I don't think they're going to shut it down because I think they're too worried about the election of 2024, and what might happen. And, the election just a couple of days ago turned out very badly for them because, of the abortion issue. If the Republican Party is not very careful from now until the election of 2024, it risks having a landslide against it in Congress. People can split their tickets, even if they hate Joe Biden and are disposed to re-electing Trump again. the Congressional Republican Party can be destroyed by the utter stupidity that seems to characterize uh, Speaker Johnson's type of outlook. Obviously, he's very, very anti-choice, and he's going to try to agitate for legislation. Uh, that makes abortion illegal across the country. Even if he doesn't agitate for it, he's going to be tagged with that because there are all kinds of statements out there that says he supports that. But if they add to the abortion issue, well, they're the guys who are always shutting the government down and hurting the economy. Those two wraps together could create a landslide for Democrats at the congressional level in 2024, or hopefully for Democrats and Greens in 2024. Of course, if we can ever get to dump the corruption thing actually going as a major movement, then we would hope that we could eject both major parties from power, since they have been so self-destructive for the United States. Anyway, going on. Cowboy Kitty has arrived, and of course, our fantastic Jost. Oh, Joe plus host. Thank you, Cowboy Kitty. And she says, captured. And Kay says, night all. Love you all. And Cowboy Kitty says, not feeling Dr. Still spineless. My state legalized weed and abortion yesterday. Ballot initiatives, is the way to go for now. Ballot initiatives, of course, they were won, in these two states. I'm sorry, they were won in the state of Ohio. And they can be, of course, extremely valuable. But of course, the big money can be applied at the state level as well as at the federal level. I don't have a tremendous amount of faith. I have some faith, but I don't have a tremendous amount of faith, in ballot initiatives, at the state level when it comes to single-payer health care. I would like to see those initiatives. I support, those initiatives. But I think without the dump the corruption movement actually backing them, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get passed. That said, I'm obviously for such initiatives. I obviously back them strongly. That's why I wear the red beret for Medicare for All. So, I guess I had to say those two things. If there are no other comments, I will retire for the night. I have something I must do before the night is over. So I'm going to have to cut this a little short. But after all, I've already been here for an hour and a half. So take care, everybody. Oh, I have to announce, but once again, I will not be here tomorrow night, at 9. I have my granddaughter who is on the production team of a show, at her high school, specifically Treasure Island. And I am committed, to going to that in order to cheer her on. And so I won't be here tomorrow night at 9 p.m. But I will be here on Saturday night at 9 p.m. So you can catch me on Saturday night, at 9 p.m. when I will make up the Dump the Corruption show that I usually do on Friday. And Cowboy Kitty says I can grow plants now. Cowboy Kitty, that is wonderful. I'm glad to know that you can grow plants now. So marijuana has been legalized here in Virginia. Uh, they have uh, um, 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 cannabis dispensaries, okay, all over the state now. Okay, it's a little restricted because you have to get a certification from the doctor. Uh, uh, okay, that you need to buy products for medical reasons, and that costs something. It costs about $100 a year. So of course, there's the usual discrimination against poor people who cannot easily afford the $100. But cannabis is still now widely available throughout the state, okay, of Virginia. Let's say it's quasi legalized here, but in a discriminatory way against the poor. So, okay, on that note, hope to see you on Saturday at 9 p.m., which is, by the way, an old time for me. I used to do all my live streams on Saturday night, okay, at 9 p.m. So I'll see you then, and I'll probably see you on Dee's show at 8 p.m. also, if she has a show as well. So I'm ending the stream now. Thank you very much for coming.